Logan stood on the wobbly picnic table, raising a lukewarm beer to toast his own promotion, loud enough for the entire second shift to hear. He called himself the new partner, the future of Havensport Tool and Die. The welders clapped nervously, looking at me like I was already a ghost. I just sipped my iced tea. My brother thought he was taking my job, but he was actually inheriting a crime scene, and I had already printed the receipts. The humid air in Mariwick, Ohio, always smelled like wet asphalt and heated metal, a scent that had settled into my pores over the last decade. It was the smell of Havensport Tool and Die, the smell of my livelihood, and usually, I found it comforting. But on that Friday afternoon in July, standing in the scorching employee parking lot with a paper plate of potato salad in my hand, the air felt suffocating. We were celebrating the acquisition of the Grand Green Agri contract. It was a deal that was supposed to secure our production schedule for the next 18 months, keeping the third shift running and the lights on. The mood should have been one of collective relief. Instead, it felt like a coronation for a king who had never won a battle. My brother, Logan, was standing on top of a swaying picnic table. He had unbuttoned the collar of his dress shirt, and his face was flushed with the kind of confidence that usually comes from a bottle, though he was only holding a light beer. "Hey everyone, listen up," Logan shouted, his voice booming over the low hum of the ventilation fans on the roof. The chatter died down. 200 employees, machinists, welders, logistics coordinators, and janitorial staff turned to look at him. I saw Joe Miller, our floor foreman for 20 years, shift his weight uncomfortably and glance at me. I kept my face perfectly still, a mask of professional disinterest. "We all know this contract is a big win," Logan continued, gesturing broadly with his drink. "But it is just the beginning. Derek and I have been talking strategy, big strategy, and I just want to say, as the new partner coming on board to steer this ship alongside him, I am going to make sure every single one of you sees the benefits. To Havensport." He raised his bottle. A few people clapped, mostly the younger guys in shipping who liked Logan because he bought rounds at the bar and told jokes they shouldn't repeat. But the veterans? The men and women who knew how to calibrate a 5-axis CNC machine within 1,000th of an inch? They were silent. They looked at Logan. Then they looked at Derek Vane, our CEO, who was standing by the cooler with a shark-like grin plastered on his face. Finally, they looked at me. I was the director of operations. I was the one who managed the floor, the one who fought for their overtime pay, the one who knew the name of every employee's spouse and child. For 3 years, I had essentially run this company while Derek played golf, and Logan drifted in and out of sales roles he was barely qualified for. New partner? The words hung in the humid air like toxic vapor. There had been no board meeting announcement, no email from HR, no consultation with me. The person who actually ran the business. I took a slow bite of potato salad. It tasted like nothing. I caught Derek's eye. He gave me a small, dismissive nod, the kind you give a waitress when you want the check, then turned back to clap Logan on the shoulder as my brother hopped down from the table. "Hey, Gabby," Logan called out, pushing through the crowd toward me. He smelled like expensive cologne and cheap beer. "Did you hear that? Big things coming. Sis, big things." I carefully set my plate down on the edge of a truck bed. "I heard..." "Logan," I said, keeping my voice level. "Partner? That is a significant title change." He laughed, a sound that grated against my nerves. "It is not just a title. It is equity. Derek sees the potential. He knows I have the vision this place has been lacking. No offense. You are great at the day-to-day grunt work. But we need high-level thinking, grunt work." That was what he called balancing the production load, negotiating steel prices, and ensuring OSHA compliance. "Congratulations," I said. It was the only word I could manage without screaming. I walked away before he could see my hands shaking. I went straight to my car, a 5-year-old sedan that needed new brakes, and sat in the stifling heat with the windows rolled up. I watched them through the windshield. Logan was holding court, laughing, acting the part of the benevolent lord. This was our entire childhood on a loop. Logan would make a mess, or make a promise he could not keep, and he would be applauded for his spirit. I would clean up the mess, fulfill the promise, and be told I was too rigid, too serious. But this was not a broken window or a failed college class. This was a company that fed 200 families in a town that was dying. If Logan was truly a partner, if Derek was giving him equity, something was fundamentally wrong. Logan had zero capital. He had debts. He had a credit score that started with a 5. You do not just hand a manufacturing company to someone like that unless you are trying to destroy it or hide something behind his smiling face. I drove home in silence, the radio off, my mind racing through the last 6 months of operations. I tried to find the cracks in the foundation, the signs I had missed. The weekend passed in a blur of anxiety. I reorganized my pantry, scrubbed my bathroom tile, and barely slept. By Monday morning, I had resolved to stop feeling and start looking. I was not going to be the jealous sister. I was going to be the director of operations. I arrived at the plant at 6 in the morning, an hour before the front office staff usually trickled in. The factory floor was already alive. The rhythmic thrum of the presses and the high-pitched whine of the grinders were the heartbeat of my life. I put on my safety glasses and walked the yellow safety lines, nodding to the shift supervisors. "Morning, Gabriella," Joe Miller said. Stepping out of his office, he looked tired. He wiped his hands on a rag. "Morning, Joe. How is the run on the John Deere brackets?" "We are good. Ahead of schedule." "Actually," he said. He hesitated, looking down at his steel-toed boots. "Hey, about Friday. Ignore it," I said, cutting him off gently. "Business as usual. Joe, we have parts to ship." He nodded, relieved. "You got it." I went up to my office on the mezzanine, which overlooked the production floor. I sat at my desk and logged into the ERP system, the software that tracked everything from raw material intake to final shipping. If Logan was a partner, there would be paperwork, but I did not have access to the shareholder agreements or the board minutes. What I did have access to was the money flowing out of the building to keep the machines running. I started with the vendor list. Usually, I approved every new vendor. It was a control mechanism I had installed 2 years ago to stop purchasing managers from getting kickbacks. But as I scrolled through the active accounts for the last month, a name popped up that I did not recognize: Crownline Industrial Supply. I frowned. I clicked on the vendor profile. It had been created 4 weeks ago. The user who created it was not one of my purchasing agents. It was Lena Morkant, the CFO. That was odd. Lena did not do data entry. She was a big-picture finance executive who rarely touched the tactical system. I pulled the transaction history for Crownline in the last month alone. We had issued 12 purchase orders to them. The total value was nearly $80,000. I clicked on the first PO. It was for carbide cutting inserts, the disposable tips we used on the milling machines. I knew the price of carbide like I knew the price of milk. We usually paid about $12 an insert from our primary supplier, Kennametal. Crownline was charging us $18.50. I felt a cold prickle on the back of my neck. That was a 50% markup. I opened another PO. This one was for hydraulic fluid. Again, the price was inflated, nearly 30% over market rate. But what caught my eye was the line item at the bottom of the invoice: expedited processing fee, $2,000. We did not need expedited hydraulic fluid. We kept 50-gallon drums of the stuff in the back cage. We had never run low in my entire tenure. I printed the invoices. My hands were steady now. This was data. Data did not lie. Data did not brag at picnics. I needed to see if the product was actually sitting on my shelves. I grabbed my clipboard and headed back down to the floor. Making a beeline for the quality assurance cage, Maya Ellison was there. Measuring a steel pin with a digital micrometer, Maya was my best hire. She was 28, had a degree in statistics, and had eyes that missed nothing. She was also the only person in the building I trusted completely. "Maya," I said, stepping into the cage. "Close the door." She looked up, saw the expression on my face, and set the micrometer down. She kicked the door shut with her heel. "What is going on?" she asked. "And do not tell me it is about Logan, because I already feel sick about that." "It is not about Logan," I said. "Well, maybe it is. I need to check something. Have we received any shipments from a company called Crown Line Industrial Supply in the last few weeks?" Maya frowned, her brow furrowing. "Crown Line? No, the name does not ring a bell, and I log every incoming lot for inspection." I handed her the printouts. "According to these, we have received $80,000 worth of consumables, carbide, fluid, grinding wheels." Maya scanned the papers. Her eyes widened. "Gabriella, look at the dates." I looked. July 12th, July 15th, July 20th. I was here all those days. Maya said, "I signed for the deliveries. We got shipments from Kennametal and Granger, nothing from Crown Line." She moved to her computer and pulled up the inventory logs. "Wait," she said, typing furiously. "Look at this. The inventory counts for these items. They have been updated. Show me. See here?" She pointed to the screen. On July 15th, the system shows we added 500 inserts, but there is no receiving ticket number. It just says, "Manual adjustment, L, M, Lena Morcant." So, the finance department is manually adding inventory to the system to match the invoices. I said, my voice low, "But the physical product never crossed our dock, which means we are paying for air." Maya whispered, "We are paying a premium for air," I corrected, "and we are paying rush fees on top of it." Maya looked at me, fear creeping into her expression. "This is not just an error. Gabriella, this is theft. Who signs the checks?" "Derek." I said, "Derek and Lena, and now your brother is the new partner." She said. I took the papers back from her. "Do not say a word to anyone. Maya, not even Joe. Keep your logs clean. If anyone asks, you just count what is physically in the cage." I went back upstairs, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. This was not just nepotism. This was a strip mining operation. They were funneling cash out of the company through a fake vendor, and they were using the excitement of the new contract to hide the cash flow drain. I needed to confront Lena. If I went to Derek, he would lie. But Lena was a professional. She had a CPA license to protect. Maybe she was being pressured. Maybe she didn't realize how obvious it was. I walked down the hall to the executive wing. The carpet was thicker here, the air conditioning colder. Lena's office door was open. She was typing on her laptop, a sleek silver ultrabook that looked out of place in a factory. "Lena?" I asked, knocking on the doorframe. She looked up, her smile practiced and tight. "Gabriella, to what do I owe the pleasure? Everything running smooth on the floor? We have a problem with the accounts payable." I said, stepping in and closing the door behind me. I dropped the invoices on her desk. She didn't even look at them. She just kept smiling, her eyes devoid of warmth. I noticed some POS for a new vendor. "Crown Line," I said. "The pricing is way off." "Lena, we are paying 40% over standard, and Maya tells me we have no record of receiving these goods, yet the inventory was manually adjusted by your login." Lena sighed, as if I were a child asking why the sky was blue. "Gabriella," she said, lacing her fingers together, "you are looking at raw data without the strategic context. Crown Line is a strategic holding partner. We are securing inventory availability for the Green Agri ramp-up. The pricing includes warehousing fees and guaranteed access. We have a warehouse." I said, "It is downstairs, and we paid rush fees. Why pay a rush fee for off-site storage?" Lena stood up. She was tall, impeccable in a charcoal suit. "This is part of the restructuring Derek is working on," she said smoothly. "It is complex financial structuring to optimize our tax position and liability exposure. Honestly, Gabriella, you are brilliant with the machines. You are the best ops director we have ever had. But you do not understand high-level corporate finance. I understand that if we pay for things we do not get. It is fraud," I said bluntly. Lena's smile vanished. Her face went hard. "Be very careful. Gabriella, you are sounding paranoid. Derek has full confidence in this strategy, and now that Logan is coming on board as a partner, We need everyone pulling in the same direction. My advice? Focus on the floor. Make sure those parts get made. Let us handle the books. She sat back down and turned her attention to her screen. The meeting was over. I walked out, feeling like I had just stepped off a ledge. She wasn't scared. She wasn't confused. She was arrogant. They were so confident in their control that they didn't even bother to make the lie convincing. My phone buzzed in my pocket. It was a text from my mother. Claudia, dinner tonight at the Prime Cut. 7 p.m. Wesley wants to celebrate the family success. Be there. Love, Mom. I stared at the screen. Wesley Carr. My mother's new husband of 6 months. He was a consultant, a man who spoke in buzzwords and wore loafers that cost more than my mortgage payment. I almost texted back that I was sick. I almost went home to hide. But I thought about the ghost inventory. I thought about Joe Miller and the 200 people downstairs. I typed, I will be there. The Prime Cut was the most expensive restaurant in Marowak, a place with dark wood paneling and steaks that were served on sizzling platters. When I arrived, they were already seated at a round booth in the corner. My mother looked radiant. She was wearing a new dress, pearls, and her hair was done. She looked younger, lighter. Beside her sat Wesley, looking slick and satisfied. And of course, Logan was there, wearing a suit that was slightly too shiny, checking his phone. Gabby! Wesley boomed, standing up halfway to shake my hand. His grip was loose, clammy. So glad you could make it. We are celebrating. I sat down. The waiter poured me a glass of wine without asking. You look tired. Honey, my mother said, reaching out to pat my hand. Are you working too hard? Just the usual. Mom, I said. Wesley swirled his scotch. Well, that is why we are here, isn't it? To talk about the future? He looked at Logan, then back at me. I have been advising Derek on some modernization strategies. Wesley said, Havensport is a gem, but it is dusty. It needs polishing. It needs new blood. That is why I pushed for Logan to step up. You pushed for it? I asked. I thought Derek chose him. Wesley winked. I facilitated the introduction of ideas. Derek needs a partner who understands the new economy, someone who can be the face of the company while we reconfigure the back end. Reconfigure, I repeated. Is that what we are calling it? Wesley chuckled. Always the literalist. Gabriella, look, this is a win for the family. Logan is going to be the partner. That means equity. That means real wealth generation for the Reeds. I looked at Logan. He was beaming, eating up every word. He didn't hear the condescension in Wesley's voice. He didn't hear the way Wesley said, face of the company, like it meant mask. What exactly does a partner do? Logan? I asked quietly. Logan rolled his eyes. Oh, here we go. Jealousy looks ugly on you. Gabby, I'm going to be handling business development, client relations, the big picture stuff. You know, the stuff you hate. I turned to Wesley. And this restructuring? Does it involve vendors like Crownline Industrial Supply? Wesley froze for a split second. The glass stopped halfway to his mouth. It was microscopic, but I saw it. Then, the mask was back. Operational details are Derek's purview, he said smoothly. But yes, supply chain optimization is key. My mother squeezed my hand, oblivious to the tension. Gabriella, please, just be happy for your brother. For once, can you just support him? He has finally found his path. I looked at her pleading eyes. She wanted this so badly. She wanted her son to be the success story. She wanted to believe that marrying Wesley had fixed our broken little family. I realized then that she was the perfect shield. And Logan was the perfect patsy. They were setting him up. The new partner, it sounded grand, but if things went south, if the IRS came looking, or if the bank audited the inventory, whose name would be on the business development documents? Who was the face of the new era? Logan, Wesley, and Derek were stripping the copper out of the walls, and they were handing Logan a spray can of gold paint to cover the holes. I forced a smile. It felt like cracking plaster. You are right. Mom, I said, I am sorry. Congratulations. Logan, it is a huge opportunity. Logan grinned. Magnanimous in his victory. Thanks, sis. Do not worry. I will remember the little people when I get my corner office. I made it through dinner by drinking 2 glasses of wine and saying almost nothing. I watched Wesley steer the conversation, watched him flatter Logan, watched him manipulate my mother. He was a predator. When I finally got home, I didn't go to sleep. I opened my laptop at my kitchen table. I created a new folder on my encrypted drive. I named it Project Phoenix. I started a timeline. July 1st. Crown line vendor created by L. Morcant. July 15th. Inventory manual adjustment. July 28th. Logan announces partnership. July 28th. Wesley admits to reconfiguring the company. I typed out everything I remembered from the invoices. I wrote down the exact conversation with Lena. I wrote down Wesley's reaction to the name Crown Line. They thought I was just the sister. The dependable, boring, operational sister who would keep her head down and keep the machines running while they looted the place. They thought I would be too hurt by the nepotism to see the crime. They were wrong. If they wanted a fight, they were going to get one. But I wasn't going to fight with shouting matches at picnics. I was going to fight with paper. I was going to fight with process. I logged into the employee portal and downloaded the organizational chart, taking a screenshot of Logan's new provisional title, Business Development Lead. I stared at the screen until my eyes burned. Okay, brother, I whispered to the empty room. You want to be the partner? Let's see if you can survive the audit. I closed the laptop. The game had started. And I was the only one who knew the rules. The email I sent on Tuesday morning was boring. It was intentionally dry, bureaucratic, and completely standard. I titled it, Quarterly Vendor Performance Review. Q3 initiation and attached a blank template. I copied the purchasing manager, the quality lead, and, as per protocol, the CEO. In any normal fiscal year, this email would have been ignored. The vendor review was a hygiene task, the corporate equivalent of flossing. I would pull the delivery times, the defect rates, and the cost variances, and then we would yell at the underperforming suppliers until they promised to do better. But I knew this was not a normal year. Less than 20 minutes after I hit send, my desk phone rang. It was not the purchasing manager, it was Derek Vane's executive assistant, asking me to come up to the corner office immediately. When I walked in, Derek was standing by the window, looking out over the employee lot. He didn't turn around when I closed the door. Gabriella, he said, his voice smooth, lacking the usual frantic energy he had when a client was angry. I saw your email regarding the vendor reviews. Yes, I said, taking the chair he hadn't offered. We are due, especially with the Green Agri ramp-up. I want to make sure the supply chain is hardened before we hit peak volume in October. Derek turned. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. His eyes were cold, calculating flat surfaces. I appreciate the initiative, he said. I really do. That is why you are such an asset here. But I'm going to ask you to pause on that. Pause on quality control? I asked, keeping my voice neutral. Pause on the review process. He corrected. We are in a delicate phase of negotiations with several strategic partners. Crown Line, specifically. We are leveraging a bulk buy agreement that ties into some long-term financing. If you start picking apart their delivery metrics right now, it sends the wrong message. It looks like we are second-guessing the relationship. I folded my hands in my lap to hide the tension in my knuckles. Derek, I said, carefully, I am seeing delivery gaps. I am seeing rush fees for inventory we do not need. If I cannot audit the performance, I cannot guarantee production. That is my job. It was your job, Derek said. He walked over to his desk and leaned against it, crossing his ankles. But as we restructure, we are elevating certain relationships out of the operational tier and into the strategic tier. Crown Line is a strategic partner. They report directly to finance and myself. You do not need to worry about them. Focus on the steel. Focus on the labor hours. Let me and your brother handle the partnerships. My brother. I said, Logan has a knack for this. Derek said, his grin widening. He understands that business is about people, not just spreadsheets. He is going to be instrumental in this next phase. So, consider the vendor review canceled until further notice." He turned back to his computer. Dismissing me, I walked out of the office with a clear understanding of two things. First, they were terrified of anyone looking closely at Crown Line. Second, they were using my brother's ego as a human shield. The rest of the week was a study in humiliation. Logan had moved into a vacant office near the conference room. He had ordered new furniture. Sleek, modern chairs that looked ridiculous against the 1970s wood paneling of the hallway. He spent his days walking around with a headset on, talking loudly about synergy and leverage to people who I suspected were not actually on the other end of the line. On Thursday evening, I was walking to my car, exhausted. The second shift was clocking in, and the parking lot was a churn of pickup trucks and sedans. "Hey, Director!" I stiffened. Logan was leaning against his car. A brand new lease by the look of it. A German sports sedan, black on black. He was wearing a suit that cost more than the weekly wage of the guys walking past him. "Nice ride," I said, unlocking my door. "It fits the new role." "Do you not think?" he asked, pushing off the car to block my path. He wasn't aggressive, exactly, but he was taking up space. He was asserting dominance. "It is a lot of car for a business development lead," I said. Logan laughed. He shook his head, looking at me with a pity that made my stomach turn. "See, that is your problem. Gabby, you think small. You think about the monthly payment. I think about the image. Derek is grooming me because he knows I can sell the vision. I am a closer. You? You are the dependable employee. You are the one who keeps the lights on. And we need that, but do not confuse maintenance with leadership." I gripped my keys so hard they bit into my palm. "Is that what Wesley told you?" I asked quietly. "That you are a closer?" Logan's face darkened. "Do not bring him into this. Wesley believes in me, more than you ever did. Mom finally has someone who sees the potential in this family. And you are just sulking because you are not the favorite anymore." "I am not sulking. Logan, I am worried." "About what?" he snapped. "That I will outshine you?" "No," I said. "I am worried that when the bill comes due for all this vision, you are the one who is going to be holding the check." He sneered at me. "You are pathetic. Gabriella, go home. Watch some TV. Let the big dogs run the porch." He got into his car and revved the engine, peeling out of the lot with a screech of tires that made 3 machinists turn and shake their heads. I drove to the grocery store and sat in the parking lot for 20 minutes. Just breathing. Let the big dogs run the porch. He sounded like a bad movie villain. But the damage he could do was real. My phone rang. The screen said, "Harold Bryce." I stared at it. Harold was the founder of Havensport. He was 72, retired for 5 years, and spent most of his time fishing in Florida. We exchanged Christmas cards, but he never called. I answered, "Harold?" "Gabriella." His voice was gravelly, familiar. It sounded like safety. It sounded like the old days. "I am back in town. I am hearing things." "What kind of things?" I asked. "I am hearing that Derek Vane is introducing your brother as a partner." Harold said, "I am hearing that from my old foreman, who called me concerned about the sudden change in command." "Gabriella, tell me it is just talk." "It is not just talk." "Harold, he is telling everyone." There was a silence on the line, heavy and long. "That is impossible," Harold said finally. "I still own 15% of the stock. The rest is with the investment group in Chicago and a few minority holders. Derek has a mandate to manage, but he cannot dilute shares or bring in a new equity partner without a board vote. And I have not voted on anything in 6 months. My heart skipped a beat. He is calling himself a partner. "Harold, Derek is backing him up. Meet me," Harold said. "The diner on Route 19. 40 minutes. I drove fast. The diner was a chrome and neon relic that served coffee strong enough to strip paint. Harold was waiting in a back booth, wearing a flannel shirt and a fishing vest. He looked older, frailer than I remembered, but his eyes were sharp. He didn't waste time with pleasantries. "Tell me everything," he said. I told him about the cookout, I told him about the blocked vendor review. I told him about Crown Line and the inventory adjustments. I didn't mention Wesley Carr yet. I wanted to see where Harold's head was. When I finished, Harold pushed his coffee cup away. He looked sick. Crown Line, he muttered. Never heard of them. Harold, how is this possible? I asked. If you didn't vote him in. Is Logan lying? Harold sighed. He pulled a folded paper napkin from the dispenser and flattened it out. Derek's contract has a clause. He said, I argued against it 5 years ago. But the Chicago group wanted a dynamic CEO. It allows him to designate a strategic interim partner for special projects. It gives the designee temporary executive authority, but no actual shares. It is meant for bringing in crisis management consultants. So Logan is not an owner? I asked. No, he has no equity. He has a title that expires the moment Derek decides the project is over. But here is the kicker. Gabriella, that clause also allows Derek to bypass standard procurement rules for any initiative led by this strategic partner. It raises his spending limit from $50,000 to $500,000 without board approval. I felt the blood drain from my face. It was not about making Logan a partner. It was about unlocking the spending limit. They needed Logan in that seat, so they could funnel $500,000 at a time out of the company without triggering a board review. He is a key, I whispered. He is just a key to the safe, and he probably thinks he won the lottery. Harold said sadly, he is a fool, Gabriella. But Derek? Derek is dangerous. If he is draining cash, the company won't last 6 months. We run on thin margins. Harold, I said, leaning in, my mother's new husband is involved. Wesley Carr. He is advising Derek. Harold's eyes narrowed. Carr? The liquidator? You know him? I know the name. He stripped a textile mill in Kentucky 3 years ago, left the pension fund empty. If he is whispering in Derek's ear, they are not trying to save Havensport. They are trying to gut it and sell the carcass. We sat in silence for a moment. The waitress poured more coffee. What do I do? I asked. Harold looked at me. You are the director of operations. You have a fiduciary duty to the company, not to the CEO, but you need proof, real proof, not just suspicious invoices. You need to trace the money. He reached into his vest pocket and pulled out a business card. He slid it across the table. This is Dr. Simon Kett. He is the independent director on the board. He is a professor of ethics at the State University. He is a stickler for rules. He does not like me much, thinks I am too old school, but he hates impropriety. If you can show him that the company is at risk, he can call a vote of no confidence, but I cannot just go to him with a hunch. I said, no. Harold agreed. You build a case. You are the daughter of this factory. Gabriella, you know where the bodies are buried. Find them. I left the diner with a mission. The sadness I felt about Logan was being replaced by a cold, hard resolve. They were using my family to kill my home. The next morning, I went straight to Maya. Maya Ellison was already in the quality cage, staring at her monitors. She looked tired. Close the door, I said. She hit the button, and the magnetic lock engaged. I need more than the inventory counts. I said, I need to know where the Crown Line invoices are actually going. Maya bit her lip. I cannot access the bank records. Gabriella, that is Lena's fortress. I know. But I bet you can access the shipping manifests and the bill of lading archives. If Crown Line is shipping us ghost inventory, there has to be a paper trail of where the phantom trucks are coming from, or at least where the system says they are coming from. Maya's fingers flew across the keyboard. She pulled up the raw data tables from the logistics module. Okay, she said. I am filtering for Crown Line. Here, she pointed to a line of code. The ship from field is generic, she said. It just says Crown Line Dist, Midwest. But look at the bill tow override on the invoice scans. She clicked open a PDF of one of the scanned invoices I had found earlier. She zoomed in on the bottom left corner, in the fine print. Remit payment to Vane Car Solutions, LLC. I stared at the screen. It was so brazen. They hadn't even tried to hide it well. They assumed no one in the operations department would ever look at the remittance address on a finance document. Vane Carr. I read aloud. Derek Vane, Wesley Carr. They are paying themselves. Maya whispered. They are taking money out of the company, paying a vendor that doesn't exist, and the money lands in an LLC they own. And Logan? I asked. Maya scrolled down. Is his name on here? No, just Vane and Carr. Logan wasn't getting a dime of the stolen money. He was getting a title, a leased car, and the liability. When this imploded, his signature would be on the purchase orders, but the money would be in Wesley's offshore account. Print it, I said. Print it all. I took the afternoon off. I told the floor manager I had a dentist appointment. Instead, I drove to the next town over, to a sleek office building that housed the law firm of Rowland Associates. Tessa Rowland was a corporate attorney I had met at a Women in Manufacturing conference a year ago. She was sharp, cynical, and expensive. I paid her retainer from my personal savings account. I sat in her glass-walled office and laid it all out. The partner title, the blocked review, the shell company, the Vane Carr LLC. Tessa listened without interrupting, taking notes on a yellow legal pad. When I finished, she capped her pen. You are walking a tightrope. Gabriella. She said, Can I sue them? I asked. Not yet. She said, You are an employee. You don't have standing to sue for mismanagement unless you are a shareholder. I am not. Then your duty is to your employer. Technically, if you suspect fraud, you are supposed to report it to the compliance officer. The compliance officer is the CFO, Lena Morcant. I said, She is the one cutting the checks. Exactly. Tessa said, That is the trap. If you report it to her, you are fired for insubordination or creating a hostile work environment. If you leak it to the press, you are sued for breach of confidentiality. So I do nothing? No. Tessa leaned forward. You protect yourself, and you gather intelligence legally. Listen to me very carefully. Gabriella. You can collect anything that is available to you in the normal course of your duties. Emails sent to you, invoices stored on servers you have access to, public filings like the LLC registration. She paused, her eyes locking onto mine. But you cannot hack, you cannot guess passwords, you cannot break into a physical file cabinet that is locked, you cannot record conversations without consent in a two-party consent state. If you cross the line into corporate espionage, any evidence you find is fruit of the poisonous tree. It will be thrown out, and you will go to jail. I understand. I said, Good. Your goal right now is not to blow it up. It is to survive long enough to hand a bulletproof package to the board. You need to be the sane one. The boring one. Tessa stood up. And Gabriella? Get a separate email address. Do not communicate with me or anyone else about this from your work device. They will be monitoring it. I left her office feeling heavier, but steadier. I had a rule book now. I started that night. I created a new email account, OperationIronProtonMail.com. I drafted my first memo to Dr. Simon Kett. I kept it dry. Just like Tessa advised, I didn't mention fraud. I didn't mention Vane Carr. Subject: Operational Risk Assessment, Supply Chain Volatility, Dr. Kett. As part of my monthly operational review, I am highlighting a developing risk regarding raw material continuity. We have seen a 40% increase in consumable costs due to vendor consolidation under a new supplier. Crown line. This variance is currently unbudgeted and may impact Q3 margins. I am documenting this for the board's awareness regarding production stability. Respectfully, Gabriella Reed, Director of Operations. I sent it. It was a warning shot. It told him that I knew something was wrong with the money. But I was framing it as a production problem. It forced him to ask questions. If he asked Derek, and Derek lied. That was on record. The next 2 weeks were a strange kind of purgatory. I went to work. I smiled at Logan, who was becoming more insufferable by the day. He had started parking in the visitor spots, claiming he needed quick access for his meetings. He stopped wearing safety glasses on the floor, carrying them in his hand like a prop. I continued to gather data. Maya and I built a shadow ledger. Every time a fake invoice came in, we logged it. We tracked the manual inventory adjustments. We had a spreadsheet that showed exactly how much money was bleeding out. $150,000 in 3 weeks. Then came the twist. It was a Tuesday afternoon. I was in the break room, getting coffee. My personal phone buzzed in my pocket. It was a text message. The number was unfamiliar. A local area code, but not a contact I had saved. I opened it. Check Crown Line's shipping address. That was it. Just 4 words. I stared at the screen. Who sent this? Was it Lena, growing a conscience? Was it a disgruntled clerk in finance? I texted back. Who is this? No reply. I went back to my desk and pulled up the vendor file again. The address listed for Crown Line Industrial Supply was 1402 Oak Street, Suite B, Briar Glen, Indiana. Briar Glen was a small town about 2 hours west of us. It was in the middle of cornfields. It didn't make sense as a hub for industrial distribution. I pulled up Google Maps and typed in the address. Street View showed a single-story strip mall. There was a nail salon, a payday loan place, and a generic door marked Suite B. It certainly wasn't a warehouse. It wasn't a factory. There were no loading docks. There were no semi-trucks. It was a storefront. I zoomed in. The sign on the door of the neighboring unit was for a pack ship service. My heart hammered. It wasn't even an office. It was a mail drop. We were sending hundreds of thousands of dollars to a mailbox next to a nail salon. I looked at the clock. It was 3 in the afternoon. I grabbed my purse. I walked out to the floor and found Joe Miller. Joe, I have a family emergency. I lied. I have to leave early. Can you close out the shift? Sure thing. Gabby, is everything okay? I hope so. I said. I got in my car and headed west, toward Briar Glen. I wasn't going to break in. I wasn't going to hack anything. I was just going to take a picture, because a picture of an empty strip mall storefront was something even Dr. Simon Kett couldn't ignore, and it was something that proved my brother wasn't a partner. He was the fall guy for a ghost story. As I drove, the cornfields blurring past, I thought about Logan's face in the parking lot. I am a closer. He was right. He was going to close us down. Unless I got there first. I pressed the accelerator, the engine whining as I sped toward the truth. The drive to Briar Glen took 2 hours of flat, unyielding highway through the heart of the Corn Belt. It was Saturday. I should have been doing laundry or sleeping in, trying to recover from the stress fracture that my life had become. Instead, I was in my car, drinking lukewarm gas station coffee, tracking a ghost. The anonymous text message burned in my mind. Check Crown Line's shipping address. I arrived in Briar Glen just after 10 in the morning. It was a town that had seen better days. The kind of place where the main street was half empty and the Walmart on the bypass was the new town square. I turned onto Oak Street. The GPS led me away from the industrial park, away from the rail lines, and into a rundown commercial zone sandwiched between a used car lot and a budget motel. I slowed down, checking the numbers on the mailboxes. 1402. There it was. I pulled into the cracked asphalt parking lot and killed the engine. I sat there for a long moment, just staring. If you read the invoices Lena Moorcant processed, Crown Line Industrial Supply was a premier logistics partner capable of handling high-volume steel and carbide distribution. In reality, Crown Line Industrial Supply was a suite in a beige vinyl-sided strip mall. To the left was a nail salon called Polished. To the right was a tax preparation office that looked closed for the season. And in the middle, Suite B. There was no loading dock. There was no warehouse. There was no fleet of trucks. There was just a glass door with cheap tinting and a small white decal that listed the suite number. Through the glass, I could see a small vestibule lined with metal mailboxes, the kind you rent when you need a physical address for a business but do not actually have an office. I grabbed my phone and stepped out of the car. The heat was oppressive, rising off the pavement in shimmering waves. I walked up to the door. It was locked. I peered through the gap in the tinting. Inside, the floor was covered in cheap commercial carpet. There was a single desk, empty except for a stack of flyers, on the back wall. A grid of perhaps 50 mail slots. I took a picture, then I took a close-up of the door. Then I walked around the back of the building. There were 3 dumpsters and a back door for the nail salon where 2 women were smoking cigarettes. There was no rear entrance for Suite B large enough to fit a pallet of hydraulic fluid, let alone the $80,000 worth of inventory we had supposedly received. I walked back to my car, my heart pounding with a cold, hard rhythm. It was one thing to suspect fraud. It was another thing to stand in front of it. I sat in the driver's seat and opened the browser on my phone. I navigated to the Indiana Secretary of State's business search portal. I typed in Crown Line Industrial Supply. The record popped up instantly. Entity type, Limited Liability Company. Formation date, November 12th, last year. 8 months ago, just before Wesley started showing up at our family dinners, just before Derek started talking about modernization, I scrolled down to the registered agent section. Originally, it listed a generic legal service, but there was a filing amendment dated 3 months ago. Registered agent, WK Consultancies. Inc. I froze. WK, Wesley Carr. He had gotten sloppy. Or, more likely, he was so arrogant he didn't think anyone would look this deep. He had amended the filing to route the legal correspondence to his own consulting firm, probably to save a few $100s on agent fees. I took screenshots of everything, the formation date, the agent change, the address. I drove home in silence, the anger inside me hardening into something brittle and sharp. They were not just stealing money, they were insulting us. They were insulting the intelligence of every person who worked at Havensport, and they were using my brother as the hood ornament for their getaway car. Monday morning hit me like a physical blow. I walked into the plant at 7, ready to go to the server room and secure my digital evidence, but before I could even set my purse down, my keycard failed to open my office door. The little light blinked red. Access denied. I tried it again. Red. A shadow fell over me. I turned to find Derek Vane standing there, flanked by the HR manager, a woman named Susan, who looked like she wanted to be anywhere else in the world. "Gabriella," Derek said, his voice terrifyingly cheerful. "Perfect timing. Let's walk to the conference room. We have some exciting news." My stomach dropped. I looked at my locked door. "Is there a reason I'm locked out of my office?" "Derek?" "Protocol," he said breezily. "Whenever we do a structural realignment, IT resets permissions. Come on." I followed them. I didn't have a choice. In the conference room, Logan was already sitting at the head of the table. He was wearing a 3-piece suit, despite the July heat. He looked like he was posing for a magazine cover. "Hey, sis," he said, flashing a grin. "Grab a seat." I sat. Derek remained standing. "As you know," he began, "Havensport is pivoting. We are moving from a legacy manufacturing model to a dynamic, client-focused model. To support this, we are realigning our leadership assets." He slid a piece of paper across the table to me. It was a new organizational chart. Logan's name was at the top, right under Derek's. Logan Reed, Business Development Lead Strategic Partner. My eyes scanned down. I found my name near the bottom, in a box that dangled off the side of the chart like a vestigial limb. Gabriella Reed, Night Shift Compliance Supervisor. I looked up. The silence in the room was absolute. "Excuse me?" I said. "We need senior leadership on the 3rd shift," Derek said smoothly. "We are ramping up production for Green Agri. The night crew has been underperforming. We need your discipline. Gabriella, your eye for detail." "You are the best operator we have. You are demoting me," I said flatly. "You are moving me to the graveyard shift and removing my oversight of the main production line. It is a lateral move." Susan from HR piped up, her voice trembling slightly. "The salary band remains the same. It is not lateral," I said. Looking at Logan, "It is exile. You are removing me from the vendor meetings. You are removing me from the daily scheduling. You are burying me in the dark, so I cannot see what you are doing." Logan leaned forward, clasping his hands on the table. "See, this is the attitude I was talking about," he said. He sounded rehearsed. like he was reciting lines Wesley had fed him over breakfast. You take everything personally. This is about business needs. Gabriella. The third shift is a mess. We need you to fix it. Unless you think you are too good to work with the night crew? He had me. If I refused, I was insubordinate. If I quit, I lost my access to the building and the evidence I needed. I looked at the chart again. Night shift supervisor. It meant working from 11 at night until 7 in the morning. It meant sleeping while the rest of the world was awake. It meant I would be in the building when the office staff was gone. I realized, with a sudden jolt, that this was a mistake on their part. They thought they were sidelining me, but they were actually giving me the keys to the castle during the only hours when no one was watching. Fine, I said. I will take the assignment. Derek looked surprised. He exchanged a glance with Logan. Great, Derek said, recovering his composure. Effective tonight. Hand over your day shift keys to Logan. He will be covering the operational overlap. I slid my master key across the table. Logan picked it up and jingled it, a smirk playing on his lips. Welcome to the team, he said. The humiliation wasn't over. That afternoon, Derek called an all-hands meeting to announce the changes. We gathered on the factory floor. The machines were idled. The air was heavy with the smell of coolant and sweat. Derek stood on the podium, with Logan beside him. I stood in the back, near the scrap bins. We are entering a new era, Derek shouted, and leading the charge is Logan Reed. Logan has the energy, the connections, and the vision to take Havensport global. Logan stepped up to the microphone. He looked out at the sea of faces, men and women who had known him since he was a kid, scraping his knees in the parking lot. Thank you. Derek, Logan said, I know some of you are used to the old ways. You are used to doing things because that is how we always did them. He paused, his eyes scanning the crowd until they landed on me. My sister, Gabriella, has been a rock for this company. He said, let's give her a hand. A few people clapped politely. Most just stared at their boots, but, Logan continued, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial tone. We all know Gabriella loves her checklists. She is all process, no vision, and that is fine. We need people to check the boxes. But while she is making sure the T's are crossed on the night shift, I am going to be out there hunting big game for all of us. He laughed. A short, sharp bark of a laugh, and then a few of the middle managers, guys who were terrified of losing their jobs, guys who saw which way the wind was blowing, started to laugh too. It was a nervous, jagged sound. I stood there, burning. I wanted to scream. I wanted to walk up to that podium and tell them that the big game hunter was driving a leased car paid for by a shell company in a strip mall. I wanted to tell them that their pension contributions were probably already gone, but I looked at Joe Miller. He wasn't laughing. He was watching me. He looked worried. If I exploded now, I would be the crazy sister. I would be the jealous sibling. Wesley would spin it, and I would be escorted out by security. And then there would be no one left to stop them. I swallowed the bile in my throat. I kept my face blank. I nodded, once, at Logan. Enjoy the spotlight, brother. I thought, because I am going to turn off the power. I started my new shift that night. The factory at night was a different beast. It was quieter, shadowier. The third shift crew was a rougher bunch. Guys who were working 2 jobs, or guys who couldn't sleep. I spent the first 3 nights just doing the job. I walked the line. I fixed a jammed press. I signed off on the quality checks. I let the office think I was beaten. On Thursday morning, after my shift ended, but before the front office arrived, I drove to the city to meet Tessa Rowland again. I sat in her office, drinking strong coffee, my eyes gritty with fatigue. They moved me to nights, I said. Tessa nodded. Constructive dismissal. They want you to quit. I am not quitting. I said, I went to Briar Glen. I found the shell company. It is linked to Wesley Carr. I showed her the photos and the screenshots. Tessa studied them. This is good. It is strong circumstantial evidence of self-dealing. But it is not enough to seize control. You need a mechanism. She pressed a button on her intercom. Send Mr. Voss in, please. The door opened, and a man walked in. He was in his 50s, wearing a rumpled blazer and no tie. He looked more like a college professor than a financier. Gabriella. This is Eli Voss, Tessa said. He is a partner at North Alder Capital. Eli shook my hand. His grip was firm, dry. Tessa tells me you have a problem, Eli said. Sitting down. I have a company being looted by its CEO and a consultant, I said, and they are using my brother as the front man. Eli nodded. Common story. Unfortunately, private equity vultures. They strip the assets, load the company with debt, pay themselves huge consulting fees, and then bankrupt the entity. He pulled a notebook out of his pocket. Tessa says you want to save it, he said. Why? Because 200 people work there, I said. Because my father built the original line. Because it is a good company if you stop stealing from it. Eli looked at me for a long moment. He seemed to be measuring me. If you want to stop them, you have to buy them out, he said. I do not have $10 million. I said, you do not need $10 million, Eli said. You need leverage, and you need a management buyout strategy, an MBO. He opened his notebook and drew a circle. Here's how it works. We form a new entity. You are the lead. We bring in the minority shareholders. You said there is a founder who is unhappy? Harold Bryce. I said, he owns 15%. Good. We rally the minority block. North Alder puts up the debt financing. We make an offer to the board to buy the company at fair market value. Why would they sell? I asked. If they are stealing, why stop? Because, Eli said, tapping the paper, you are going to offer them an exit that keeps them out of jail. Once we have the proof of fraud, we present them with a choice. Sell to us quietly and walk away with a small payout, or face a shareholder lawsuit and a criminal investigation. It is a trap. I said, it is a pincer movement, Eli corrected. But for it to work, the company has to be worth saving. Is the cash flow there? Yes, I said. If we stop the fake vendor payments, we are profitable. Eli nodded. Okay, but there is a risk. If they know you are coming, they will accelerate the looting. They will sell the hard assets. Do they have anything unique? Patents? Real estate? We have a patented tooling process for the high-pressure valves. I said, it is the only reason Green Augury hired us. Eli frowned. Watch that patent. Gabriella. If I were them, that is the first thing I would sell. It is the only thing that is portable. I left the meeting with a plan, but also a new fear. The patent. I went back to the plant that night with a specific mission. I needed to see if they were touching the intellectual property. The executive offices were dark when I did my rounds at 3 a.m. The cleaners had already come and gone. I didn't go into Derek's office. That was too risky. Instead, I went to the engineering server room. As director of operations, even on the night shift, I still had valid credentials for the technical data vault. I logged in. I queried the access logs for the patent documentation files. There it was. File US-patent-882-04-process.pdf, accessed by D. Vane. Date, yesterday. Action, export to external drive. Derek had downloaded the full patent filings, but why? I searched the legal drive. I couldn't access the board minutes, but I found a draft folder in the shared directory that the legal secretary used. It was labeled Draft Agreements. I opened it. Inside was a document titled Asset Purchase Agreement, Draft 5-4. I opened the file. My breath hitched. Seller, Havensport Tool Die. Buyer, Car Global Holdings, Cayman Islands. Assets, all intellectual property, including patent 88,204 and associated trade secrets. Purchase price, $1. $1. They were selling the patent to themselves for $1. Once they moved the patent to the Cayman Islands entity. Havensport would no longer own the process we used to make our products. We would have to lease it back from them. They would charge the company licensing fees until it bled dry, and then they would let Havensport go bankrupt while they kept the patent safe offshore. This was the endgame. They weren't just stealing cash. They were stealing the future, and they were going to leave Logan holding the empty bag. I printed the draft agreement. I folded it until it was small enough to fit in my bra. I couldn't risk leaving it in my bag. I walked back out to the floor. The rhythm of the presses felt different now. It sounded like a countdown. I needed to call Eli. I needed to call Harold. But first, my phone rang. It was 4 a.m. Who calls at 4 a.m? I looked at the screen. Mom. Panic spiked in my chest. Had something happened? Was she hurt? I ducked into the quiet of the shipping office and answered, Mom? Gabriella? Her voice was wet, thick with tears. Are you at work? Yes. Mom, what is wrong? I did something terrible. She sobbed. I shouldn't have looked. But he left his briefcase open. Who? Wesley? Yes. He was asleep. I was looking for a pen, and I saw a folder. It had our name on it. Read Family Pathway. I gripped the phone tight. What was in it? Mom? Notes, she whispered. Handwritten notes. It is a plan. Gabby. It says, Oh God, tell me, I said, my voice commanding. It says, Isolate Gabriella. It has check marks next to remove from day operations and block financial access. And next to Logan's name, it says, Public Ally/Liability Shield. She broke down crying. He is using him. She wept. He is using my boy. He wrote, flatter ego to ensure compliance. Gabriella. He thinks Logan is an idiot. I closed my eyes. Hearing it confirmed was painful, but hearing my mother realize it was heartbreaking. Mom, listen to me, I said softly. You need to stop crying. You need to be very brave. I want to confront him. She said, I want to wake him up and scream at him. No, I hissed. You cannot do that. If you tell him you know, he will destroy the evidence. He will shred everything. You have to pretend you didn't see it. But he is hurting us. I know, and I'm going to stop him, but I need you to be a spy. Mom, can you do that? There was a silence on the line. Then, a sniffle. I can try. I need you to take pictures of that folder if you can. I said, and anything else he leaves out, but do not let him know you are suspicious. Keep playing the happy wife. Can you do that for Logan? For Logan, she said, her voice trembling but stronger. Yes. Go back to bed. Mom, put the folder back exactly how you found it. I hung up. I stood in the dark shipping office, surrounded by pallets of metal that were about to be shipped out to pay for Wesley Carr's retirement. The internal conflict that had been gnawing at me, the desire to just scream, the desire to run away, evaporated. It was replaced by a cold, mathematical clarity. They had underestimated everyone. They thought my mother was a trophy. They thought Logan was a fool. They thought I was a drone. They were about to find out that the Reed family was not a resource to be mined. I walked back onto the floor. The sun was just starting to come up. Casting long gray beams of light through the high windows, Joe Miller was coming in for the first shift, holding his travel mug. Morning, night owl, he called out, keeping the place standing. I looked at him. I looked at the machines. I felt the draft agreement against my skin. More than that. Joe, I said, I am reinforcing the foundation. I went to my car. I didn't go home to sleep. I drove to the copy shop and made 3 copies of the draft agreement. One for Tessa, one for Harold, one for me. Then I called Eli Voss. I have the leverage. I said when he answered, They are moving the patent. Then we have to move fast. Eli said, How fast can you get the minority shareholders on board? Give me 48 hours. I said, I hung up. The sun was fully up now, blinding and bright. I was exhausted. I was demoted. I was working nights. But for the first time in months, I wasn't afraid. I was hunting. The Saturday morning air in Marwick was heavy with pollen and the impending threat of a thunderstorm. I parked my car at the edge of Centennial Park, a sprawling green space that bordered the river. It was neutral ground. It was public enough to be safe, but quiet enough to speak the truth. My mother, Claudia, was already there, sitting on a wooden bench beneath a weeping willow. She was wearing sunglasses, though the sun was hidden behind a thick blanket of gray clouds. As I approached, I saw her hands twisting a tissue into a tight white knot. "Mom," I said, sitting down beside her. I left a foot of space between us. She jumped slightly, then turned to look at me. She slid the sunglasses down her nose. Her eyes were red, rimmed with the exhaustion of keeping secrets. "Gabriella," she breathed. "Thank you for coming. I didn't know if you would. I am here," I said. "You said on the phone you needed to talk about Wesley." She nodded, looking out at the murky water of the river. "He has been different," she started, her voice trembling. "Ever since I found that folder, he is tighter, meaner. He thinks I'm just being a supportive wife, but he pushes me." "Pushes you how?" "He keeps telling me that I need to talk to you," she said. "He says that the transition is hard on Logan because you are undermining him from the night shift. He says that if I really care about the family legacy, I should convince you to resign." I felt a cold stone settle in my stomach. "He wants you to fire me?" I asked. "He wants you to quit," she corrected. "He says it would be more dignified. He says he can get you a severance package, a generous one, but he says you are the blockage, that the company cannot fly because you are holding on to the anchor chain." I looked at her. "Do you believe him?" She started to cry, silent tears tracking down her cheeks. "I want to believe him, Gabby. I want to believe that he is saving us. I want to believe that Logan is a genius who just needed a chance. But I heard him on the phone," she whispered. "He was talking to someone in Chicago." He laughed. He said, "The brother is a golden retriever. He will fetch whatever I throw." She turned to me, gripping my hand. Her palms were clammy. "He thinks Logan is a dog, Gabriella, and he thinks you are the enemy." I didn't pull my hand away. I looked at this woman who had raised me, who had always tried to keep the peace, often at my expense. "Mom, listen to me," I said, my voice steady and low. "Wesley is not trying to save the company. He is stripping it. He is stealing the money, the patents, the future, and he is using Logan to sign the checks so that when the police come, Wesley will be on a beach in the Caribbean and Logan will be in a cell." Her grip tightened. "No, yes. And now, he is using you. He is weaponizing your love for Logan to get rid of the only person who can stop him." I paused, letting the words hang in the humid air. "You are asking me to become smaller so he can feel bigger." I said, "That is what this is. You want me to disappear so Logan can play pretend without anyone reminding him it is fake." Claudia flinched as if I had slapped her. She pulled her hand back and covered her mouth. The sob that escaped her was a raw, wounded sound. "I am so sorry," she choked out. "I am so sorry. Gabby, I just wanted everyone to be happy. Happiness is not a strategy. Mom, it is a byproduct of truth, and the truth is ugly right now." I stood up. The wind was picking up, whipping my hair across my face. "I need you to choose," I said. "You can be Wesley's wife, or you can be our mother. You cannot be both, not anymore." She looked up at me, mascara running down her face. She looked terrified. But behind the fear, I saw a spark of the woman she used to be before she started defining herself by the men in her life. "I will not let him hurt Logan," she said, "and I will not let him destroy you. Then help me." I said, "Do not confront him. Do not fight him. Just watch him. If he leaves a paper out, take a picture. If he has a meeting, tell me who it is with. Be the ghost in his house." "I can do that," she whispered. I walked back to my car as the first drops of rain began to fall. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt hollow. Winning my mother back shouldn't have felt like a negotiation. The following week, the war moved from the emotional to the tactical. I was working the night shift, arriving at 11 and leaving at 7. It was a brutal schedule, but it gave me unchecked access to the physical reality of the plant. Maya Ellison stayed late on Tuesday night to meet me during the shift change. We huddled in the quality assurance cage, the only room on the floor with soundproof glass. "We have a problem with press number 4, Maya said, sliding a maintenance log across the desk. "What kind of problem?" I asked, rubbing my eyes. "The hydraulic seals are failing," she said. "We usually replace them every 6 months. It has been 9 months. I put in a requisition for the parts 3 weeks ago." "And?" "Denied," she said. "Purchasing marked it as deferred, non-critical." I stared at the log. Press number 4 was a 200-ton stamping machine. If the seals blew while it was under load, the ram could drop. It could shatter the die. It could kill someone. "Who denied it?" I asked. "Logan," Maya said. "He has final approval on all non-strategic spend under $5,000 now. He sent a note saying we need to sweat the assets to improve the quarterly margin." Sweat the assets. Another buzzword he had learned from Wesley. I took the logbook. This is it. Maya, this is the leverage. I spent the next 3 nights conducting a full risk audit. I walked every inch of the floor. I checked the fire extinguishers. 2 were expired. I checked the coolant levels, diluted to save money, causing increased tool wear. I checked the overtime logs. Machinists were working double shifts because we had laid off the swing shift to cut costs. It was a disaster waiting to happen. The fraud wasn't just on the balance sheet anymore. It was bleeding into the machinery. On Friday morning, I drafted a formal memo. I addressed it to the entire board of directors, including Dr. Simon Kett. Subject: Critical Safety Alert. Immediate action required to the board of directors. An internal audit of operational safety has revealed 3 critical points of failure that pose an immediate threat to life and property. 1. Deferred maintenance on high-tonnage presses has exceeded manufacturer safety limits. 2. Coolant dilution is causing thermal stress on tooling, increasing the risk of catastrophic shatter events. 3. Fatigue management protocols are being violated due to staffing reductions. I am formally requesting an emergency allocation of funds to rectify these issues before a reportable incident occurs. I am also requesting a review of the approval hierarchy that allowed safety-critical maintenance to be denied. Respectfully, Gabriella Reed, Director of Operations. I hit send at 6 in the morning. I knew it was a grenade. I knew it would force their hand. They couldn't ignore a safety warning. If someone got hurt after receiving this email, they would be personally liable for negligence. I went home and slept for 4 hours. When I woke up, my phone was silent. Too silent. I drove in for my shift at 10:30 that night. My keycard worked. That was a surprise. But when I walked into the shift supervisor's office, there was a man sitting in my chair. It was not Derek. It was a man named Peterson, an external HR consultant I had never met. He was bald, wearing a cheap suit, and had the dead eyes of a hired gun. "Ms. Reed," he said, not standing up. "Please, sit down." "Where is my shift lead?" I asked, remaining standing. "Sent home," Peterson said. "I am here to conduct an interview regarding a performance investigation." "An investigation into whom?" "Into you." "Ms. Reed," he opened a file folder. "We have received multiple reports of inventory mismanagement under your supervision," he said, his voice monotone. "Specifically, there are discrepancies in the count of carbide inserts and hydraulic fluid." I almost laughed. It was so audacious. "You mean the Crown Line inventory?" I asked. "The inventory that never arrived?" Peterson didn't blink. "The inventory that was signed into the system. As Director of Operations, you are responsible for the physical accuracy of the stock. The Finance Department has flagged a variance of over $100,000. The allegation is that you have been negligent in your cycle counts, or perhaps complicit in the theft of company property." My blood ran cold. They were flipping the script. They were blaming me for the missing inventory that they had faked. "This is retaliation," I said. "I filed a safety report this morning. This investigation was opened yesterday." Peterson lied smoothly. "Your safety report is being viewed as an attempt to distract from your own misconduct." He slid a piece of paper across the desk. "Pending the outcome of this investigation, you are placed on administrative leave. Paid, of course. You are to surrender your badge and your laptop immediately. You are not to contact any employees. You are not to set foot on the property. I looked at the paper. Notice of suspension. Signed by Derek Vane. I could have fought. I could have screamed that Peterson was a shill and Derek was a crook, but I remembered Tessa's advice. Be the boring one. I reached into my bag and pulled out my laptop. I set it on the desk. I unclipped my badge and laid it next to the computer. I will need a copy of these allegations in writing. Mailed to my attorney. I said calmly. Peterson looked disappointed. He wanted a scene. He wanted me to be the unstable sister. Standard procedure, he muttered. I walked out of the plant. I walked past the night crew. They looked at me, confused. I didn't stop. I couldn't. If I spoke to them, I was violating the order. I got to my car and locked the doors. Then, I drove straight to Tessa Rowland's office, leaving a voicemail on her emergency line. The next morning, I sat in Tessa's conference room. She was reading the suspension notice, her eyebrows knit together. This is a classic squeeze, she said. They are projecting their crimes onto you. If they fire you for cause, for theft, it discredits you as a witness. Who is going to believe the disgruntled ex-employee who stole inventory? So what do? I asked. We go on the offensive. But quietly, Tessa said. I will draft a letter demanding a preservation of evidence. We will specifically request the security camera footage of the loading dock for the dates of the alleged deliveries. They will say the cameras were broken. I said, let them... Tessa smiled thinly. Spoliation of evidence is a powerful argument in court. But Gabriella, you need to be squeaky clean. Do not talk to Maya. Do not talk to Joe. If they catch you texting an employee, they will fire you for breaching the suspension terms. I nodded. It felt like I was abandoning them. I need to buy the company. I said, I cannot just sue them by the time a lawsuit settles. Havensport will be a parking lot. Then you need money, Tessa said, and you need it fast. I went to see Eli Voss that afternoon. Eli's office was in a converted warehouse in the Arts District. It was full of modern art and exposed brick. He was drinking an espresso when I walked in. I am suspended. I said, I heard. Eli said, small town. The rumor is you were caught selling tools out the back door. You know that is a lie. I said, I do, but the bank doesn't. And if we want to do a leveraged buyout, we need the bank. He stood up and walked to a whiteboard. Here is the reality. Gabriella, I can get the debt financing from North Alder, but I need equity. I need a chunk of cash or shares to anchor the deal, and I need a reason for the board to say yes right now. I have the safety report. I said, not enough. They can spin that. We need a shareholder revolt. He turned to me. You mentioned Harold Bryce. Does he still have pull? He founded the place. I said, does he have friends? He hired half the town. Then go to him. Eli said, if you can get a voting block of 20%, Harold's 15 plus whatever else is out there, we can call a special meeting. We can force a vote on the sale. I drove to Harold's house. He lived in a modest ranch-style home on the outskirts of town. His wife, Betty, answered the door. She looked worried. He is in the den, she said. He is upset. Gabriella. Derek called him. I walked into the den. Harold was sitting in his recliner, staring at the television, which was off. He told me you were stealing, Harold said without looking up. He lied. Harold. He said you authorized the purchase of ghost inventory. He sent me the logs. It has your login on the approval codes. My heart stopped. They had hacked my account? Or maybe Lena had just altered the database. Harold, look at me. He turned his head. His eyes were watery, old and tired. I have never taken a dime from that company. I said, you know me. You watched me grow up. Do you think I would steal carbide inserts? I don't know what to think. Gabby, Derek says you are jealous of Logan. He says you are trying to sabotage the new partnership. I reached into my bag and pulled out the folded copy of the asset purchase agreement I had stolen from the server. Read this, I said. Harold put on his reading glasses. He scanned the document. His hands started to shake. $1? He whispered. They are selling the patent for $1? To themselves, I said. To a Cayman Islands shell. Harold dropped the paper. He looked sick. "This is the end," he said. "Without the patent, the factory is just a building full of used machines. That is why I am here. Harold, I have an investor, Eli Voss. We want to buy the company. We want to buy out Derek and the Chicago group, but we need your shares, and we need the shares of anyone else you trust." Harold sat up straighter. He looked at the photo of the original factory crew on his wall. "The retirees," he said, "the employee stock ownership plan from the 90s. When we dissolved it, a lot of the guys kept their shares. They are small amounts, but there are 50 of them. Can you reach them?" Harold stood up. He walked over to his desk and pulled out a battered Rolodex. "I can reach them," he said, "but they are scared. Gabriella, they need their dividends. If we fight this, and we lose, the stock goes to zero. If we don't fight," I said, "the stock goes to zero anyway. Derek is gutting the fish. He is just waiting to toss the bones." Harold looked at me. There was a new fire in his eyes. "What is the plan?" "We form a voting bloc," I said, "Marowak Stewardship Partners. We pool the shares. We demand an emergency shareholder meeting, and we present a counteroffer to buy the company." "And you run it?" Harold asked. "I run it," I said. "No consultants, no partners, just us." Harold smiled, a grim, determined smile. "I will make the calls. Come back tomorrow night. We will have a full house." I drove home feeling a glimmer of hope. I had a lawyer, I had an investor, I had the founder. But when I got to my apartment, I saw a large manila envelope taped to my front door. My heart hammered. Was it a lawsuit? A restraining order? There was no return address, just my name, written in shaky block letters. I unlocked the door and went inside before opening it. I tore the flap. Inside was a single sheet of paper. It was a photocopy of a handwritten ledger. It was titled, "Consulting Invoice Schedule, Vane Car Solutions." It listed various milestones and the associated payouts to Wesley's firm. Milestone 1, Leadership Realignment, $50,000, paid. Milestone 2, Vendor Consolidation, Crown Line, $75,000, paid. Milestone 3, Patent Transfer Preparation, $40,000, pending. And then, at the bottom, a line item that made the room spin. Milestone 4, Removal of Non-Compliant Personnel. Resolution Target, G. Reed, $25,000. I stared at the number. $25,000. That was what I was worth. That was the bounty on my head. Wesley Carr was getting paid a bonus to fire me. My phone buzzed. A text from my mother. He left it on the kitchen counter while he showered. I took a picture and printed it at the library. "Be safe. I love you." I sank onto my floor. I held the paper against my chest. They had put a price tag on my career. They had itemized my destruction like it was a pallet of steel. But as I sat there, the shock faded. It was replaced by a cold, burning rage. $25,000. They thought that was enough to get rid of me. They thought that was the cost of doing business. I stood up and walked to my fridge. I taped the invoice to the door. Resolution target. "Okay. Wesley," I said to the empty room, "you want a resolution? I am going to give you one." The boardroom at Havensport Tool & Die was a windowless chamber of mahogany and conditioned air, designed to keep the reality of the factory floor as far away as possible. I walked in at 9 in the morning, flanking Harold Bryce like a bodyguard. Derek Vane was already seated at the head of the table. When he saw me, his smile faltered, twitching at the corners like a glitching video feed. "Harold," Derek said, standing up but not moving toward us. "I believe there is a misunderstanding. This is a closed session for directors. Ms. Reed is currently under suspension pending an internal investigation. She is not permitted on the premises." Harold didn't even blink. He pulled out a chair for me. "I am not here as an employee." "Derek?" Harold rumbled, his voice gravelly with age but steady with authority. "I am here as a 15% shareholder, and under the corporate bylaws, I am entitled to bring an advisor to any review of company solvency. Gabriella is my advisor." He sat down. I sat next to him. I placed a thick binder on the table. Derek looked at the other board members. There were 5 of them. Doctor, Simon Kett sat in the middle, his face unreadable behind wire-rimmed glasses. 2 others, friends of Derek from the city, looked annoyed. The last was a representative from the bank. A woman named Mrs. Gable who looked bored. "This is highly irregular," Derek said, sitting back down. "We have an agenda. The agenda is the survival of this company," I said. My voice was calm. I didn't look at Derek. I looked directly at Dr. Kett. "I am not here to discuss my employment status," I continued. "I am here to discuss the operational viability of the Green Agri contract." Derek slammed his hand on the table. "Enough. You are here to spread conspiracy theories because you are jealous of the restructuring. Dr. Kett, I move to have her removed. I have data," I said, sliding the binder across the polished wood toward Kett. Dr. Kett looked at Derek, then at the binder. He reached out a slender hand and opened it. The first page was a graph, a stark, red line plunging downward. "What is this?" Kett asked. "That is our raw material yield," I said. "Since the vendor switched to Crown Line Industrial Supply, our scrap rate has increased by 200%. The carbide inserts we are buying at a premium are substandard. They are shattering under high-speed milling." I turned the page for him. "This is the safety log," I said. "We have bypassed mandatory maintenance on the main presses to fund the expedited shipping fees from Crown Line. We are currently operating 3 machines that are statistically likely to fail within the next 100 operational hours." Derek laughed. It was a forced, brittle sound. "She is making this up," he said. "She is manipulating the data. We have never been more profitable. The restructuring has lowered our overhead." I pulled a piece of paper from my pocket. It was an email. I didn't put it in the binder. I held it up. "Yesterday afternoon," I said, "I received a call from the procurement director at Green Agri. They have rejected our last 2 shipments due to tolerance failures. They are threatening to trigger the penalty clause in our contract. That penalty is $50,000 per day until the defect is resolved." The room went silent. The boredom vanished from Mrs. Gable's face. She leaned forward. "50,000 a day?" she asked. "Yes," I said. "And we cannot fix the defect because our inventory is filled with substandard tools purchased from a shell company in a strip mall in Indiana." Derek stood up, his face flushing a deep, ugly red. "That is slander," he shouted. "Crown Line is a strategic partner." "Then why do they share an address with a nail salon?" I asked quietly. I slid the photo of the Briar Glen storefront across the table. It landed in front of Mrs. Gable. She looked at the image of the cheap glass door and the mailboxes. She looked at Derek. "Doctor." Kett closed the binder. He took off his glasses and cleaned them with a handkerchief. "Derek," Kett said softly, "is it true that Green Agri has threatened penalties?" Derek stammered. It is a negotiation tactic. Standard pushback. Logan is handling it." "Logan?" Kett asked. "The new business lead?" "Yes. He has a rapport with them." I spoke up. "Logan is not handling it. The client called me personally because Logan stopped returning their emails 3 days ago." "Doctor," Kett put his glasses back on. "I think we need a third-party review," he said. "Immediately. I want an external audit of the supply chain and the vendor relationships." Derek's eyes darted around the room. He was trapped, and he knew it. "An audit takes weeks," Derek said, his voice dropping to a reasoned, pleading tone. "We are in the middle of a delicate capital acquisition. If we pause now for a witch hunt, the financing falls through. We will lose the liquidity we need to expand." Mrs. Gable tapped a pen against the table. "If Green Agri walks, you do not have a business to expand." "Derek, I second the motion for an audit." Derek looked at me with pure hatred. It wasn't the annoyance of a boss dealing with a subordinate. It was the hatred of a thief who realizes the lock is stronger than he thought. "Fine," Derek spat. "Schedule the audit. But until then, operations continue as planned. We cannot freeze the company because of one disgruntled employee's slide deck." He stormed out of the room. The meeting was over. I walked out with Harold. My hands were shaking. but I hid them in my pockets. You did good, Harold said. You drew blood. It is not enough. I said, he is going to run. He is going to accelerate everything. I went straight from the board meeting to the offices of North Alder Capital. Eli Voss was waiting for us in a conference room that smelled of expensive leather and espresso. Tessa Rowland was there too, typing furiously on her laptop. Did he blink? Eli asked as I sat down. He blinked. I said, Ket ordered an audit, but Derek is terrified. He is going to try to liquidate before the auditors get in the door. Eli nodded. Then we need to lock him down. He slid a stack of documents across the table. This is it. Gabriella. Merriwick Stewardship Partners. I looked at the papers. It was a special purpose vehicle. A legal entity created solely to buy the controlling interest in Havensport Tool and Die. The structure is simple, Eli explained. You are the managing partner. Harold is the lead investor. The other minority shareholders, the retirees Harold rallied, are limited partners. North Alder is providing the debt facility to cover the purchase price. I picked up the pen. This was the point of no return. If this fails. Eli said gently, you are on the hook for the legal fees. And your equity contribution. It is gone. My equity contribution was my life savings. $82,000. Everything I had saved from 10 years of working overtime, skipping vacations, and driving a car with bad brakes. I thought about the guys on the night shift. I thought about the resolution target invoice on my fridge. I signed the paper. The ink looked dark and permanent. Okay, Eli said. Gathering the documents, we have a vehicle. Now we need to make an offer. We will draft a letter of intent to the board tomorrow. We offer 10% above the current valuation, contingent on an immediate freeze of all asset transfers. It was a good plan. It was a lawful plan. But Derek and Wesley were not playing by the rules. That evening, I was at my kitchen table, going over the shareholder list with Harold on speakerphone. When a text came in from my mother, it was blurry, taken hastily. It was a picture of a calendar entry on Wesley's iPad. Emergency vote, patent transfer. Tomorrow 9 a.m., location, off-site legal counsel. My stomach dropped. They weren't waiting for the audit. They were bypassing the board meeting at the office. They were going to hold a closed session with just the friendly directors and force the patent sale through before we could submit our offer. They claimed it was tax efficient. That was the lie. They would say they were moving the patent to a holding company to save on taxes. But in reality, they were stealing the company's heart. I called Tessa. They are moving the patent tomorrow morning. I said, 9 a.m. We can't get an injunction that fast. Tessa said, not without a judge. And the courts are closed for the night. We have to stop the vote. I said, we can't stop a board vote if they have a quorum, she said. Unless what? Unless the company is under a mandatory compliance freeze, she said. I remembered the employee handbook. I remembered the whistleblower policy I had helped write 3 years ago. If a credible report of financial misconduct involving executive officers is filed through the hotline, all major asset transfers are automatically suspended for 48 hours to allow for a preliminary review by the General Counsel. Who is the General Counsel? I asked. It is an external firm. Tessa said, not Derek. They have a legal obligation to pause, but I can't file it. I said, I am suspended. They will say it is retaliation. You can't file it. Tessa agreed. But an employee with direct knowledge of the discrepancies can... Maya. I hung up and called Maya. She answered on the first ring. I need you to do something scary. I said, tell me, she said. I need you to call the ethics hotline. Tonight, you need to report the inventory discrepancies. You need to report the manual overrides by Lena Morkant. And you need to mention Vane Car Solutions by name. I can do that, Maya said. But they will know it was me. They might, I said. And if they fire you, I promise. Maya, when I buy this company, you will be the first person I rehire, and you will be the director of quality. I am not doing it for a promotion. Gabby, she said softly, I am doing it because I am tired of watching them lie. She hung up. I waited. 1 hour, 2 hours. At 11 o'clock at night, my phone buzzed. It was an automated email notification from the company's compliance system. I still received them on my personal device because IT had forgotten to remove me from the distribution list for high-priority alerts. Subject: Confidential Whistleblower Report, 8829. Status: Received. Action: Mandatory asset freeze triggered. It worked. The legal gears had ground to a halt. Derek couldn't sell the patent tomorrow morning. The external lawyers wouldn't allow it until the report was investigated. I let out a breath I had been holding for days. We had bought time, but time is a vacuum, and things rush in to fill it. At 1 a.m, there was a knock on my door. It was a frantic, heavy pounding. I looked through the peephole. It was Logan. He looked terrible. His expensive suit was rumpled, his tie was undone, and his hair was a mess. He looked like he had been crying, or drinking, or both. I opened the door. "Gabriella," he gasped, pushing past me into the living room. "You have to help me." "What happened?" I asked, locking the door behind him. He began to pace, his hands pulling at his hair. "Derek just called me. He is screaming. He says someone filed a report. He says the patent deal is frozen. He says he is going to hang me out to dry." I stood in the center of the room, watching him spin. Why would he hang you out to dry? "Logan? Unless you did something wrong." Logan stopped. He looked at me, his eyes wide and terrified. He looked like the little brother who had broken a vase and wanted me to hide the pieces. "I took money." "Gabby." I felt a coldness settle over me. Not surprise, just disappointment. "From whom?" "From Wesley." He said, "He gave me an advance. He said it was against my future equity share. He said it was a signing bonus for the partnership." "How much?" "Logan?" "30,000. He whispered. I had some debts. Online poker. It got out of hand. I owed people. Wesley said he could make it go away. He cut me a check from the Vane car account." I closed my eyes. "He paid you from the shell company." I said, "Logan, do you understand what you did? You accepted funds from a vendor that is defrauding the company you work for. That is not a bonus. That is a kickback. That is embezzlement." Logan grabbed my shoulders. His hands were shaking. "I didn't know. He told me it was legal." "Gabby, you have to fix it. You always fix it. Talk to them. Tell them I was just following orders. You know the systems. You can delete the records, right? You can hide the transaction." He was begging me to commit a crime to cover his crime. I looked at his face. It was the same face that had smiled from the picnic table while he bragged about being a partner. It was the same face that had mocked me in the parking lot for being the dependable employee. He didn't want justice. He didn't want to save the company. He wanted his big sister to make the bad feelings go away so he could go back to pretending he was a king. I stepped back, breaking his grip. "No," I said. Logan blinked. "What? No," I repeated. "I will not hide it. I will not delete it." "But they will arrest me," he cried. "If the audit happens, they will see the check." "Then you should have thought about that before you took the money." I said, "Gabriella, please. I am your brother. I am trying to save 200 jobs." "Logan," I shouted, my voice finally cracking, "I am trying to save the pension of the man who taught you how to hold a wrench. I am trying to save Mom from a predator. And you want me to burn it all down to save you?" He stared at me, shocked by my anger. "You are jealous." He spat. "You are just jealous that I got the money and you didn't." I walked to the fridge. I ripped the Resolution Target invoice off the door and shoved it into his chest. "You think I am jealous?" I asked. "Look at that." He looked at the paper. He read the line item. "Removal of non-compliant personnel, G. Reed." He read the price, $25,000. "Wesley paid himself $25,000 to fire me." I said, "And he paid you $30,000 to own you. You were $5,000 more expensive than my destruction. That is how much you are worth to them." Logan crumpled. He sat on my couch and put his head in his hands. "What do I do?" He sobbed. "You tell the truth." I said, "You go to the board. You testify against Derek and Wesley. You tell them everything. I can't, he whispered. I am scared. Then get out of my house, I said. He left. He walked out into the night, a broken man in a ruined suit. I locked the door and leaned against it. I felt tears pricking my eyes, but I didn't let them fall. I had cut the cord. It was the hardest thing I had ever done, but the weight was gone. The next morning, the counterattack began. I was preparing the final documents for the buyout offer with Eli when my phone started blowing up. Texts from the floor. Texts from people I had known for 10 years. Joe Miller. Is it true? Sarah, shipping. I can't believe you would do this. Mike, weld shop. Traitor. I stared at the messages, confused. I called Maya. She didn't answer. I called Joe. Joe picked up. His voice was cold. Joe, what is going on? I asked. We just had a town hall. Joe said, Derek spoke. He said the audit is happening because you reported the company to the feds. That is partially true. But he said you are leading a hostile takeover. Joe cut in. He said you are backed by a liquidation firm called North Alder. He said your plan is to strip the assets, fire 70% of the workforce, and sell the rest to China. He said you are doing it for revenge because you didn't get the partnership. My stomach turned over. It was a masterstroke of manipulation. Derek knew he was losing on the facts, so he was burning the emotional ground. He was turning my own people against me. Joe, that is a lie. I said, North Alder is financing a management buyout. I am the management. I am trying to save the jobs. That is not what the paper says. Joe said, Derek handed out copies of a draft plan he said he found on your server. It lists mass layoffs. He forged it. Joe, you have to believe me. I don't know what to believe anymore. Gabby, Joe said heavily, all I know is that everyone here is scared, and they are blaming you. He hung up. I sat in Eli's office, the silence ringing in my ears. They hate me, I said. Eli looked up from his papers. Of course they do, he said. Fear makes people irrational. Derek is cornered. He is lashing out. How can I save a company that thinks I am the villain? I asked. You don't save it for the applause, Eli said sternly. You save it because it is the right thing to do. You win the war first, Gabriella. You win the peace later. I nodded. He was right. I wiped my face. Send the offer. I said. Eli hit send. The letter of intent went to the board of directors at noon. Merriwick Stewardship Partners offers to purchase 100% of the outstanding shares of Havensport Tool and Die for $12 a share. Condition: immediate resignation of Derek Vane and termination of all consulting agreements with Vane Car Solutions. The trap was set. The whistle was blown. The money was on the table. Now, all we had to do was survive the explosion. I looked out the window at the city of Merriwick. Somewhere out there, Logan was hiding. Somewhere, my mother was spying. And somewhere, Derek Vane was reading my email and realizing that the dependable sister had just come for his throat. The final meeting was set for tomorrow. The main assembly bay of Havensport Tool and Die was a cathedral of industry, the ceiling vaulted 40 feet high, crisscrossed with steel girders and yellow crane rails. Usually, it was a deafening cacophony of pneumatic hammers and grinding metal, a symphony of production that I had loved since I was a child. But at 10 o'clock on Friday morning, it was silent. The machines had been idled. The power was locked out. The only sound was the shuffling of feet as 218 employees gathered in the center aisle. I stood on the mezzanine platform overlooking the floor. It was the same spot where I used to watch my father explain the line to visitors. Today, it was a stage for an execution, but the crowd didn't know who was on the block. They thought it was me. I could feel their eyes burning into me. They stood in tight clusters, the welders with their arms crossed, the machinists in their blue shop coats, the shipping clerks shifting nervously. The rumor mill had done its work. Thanks to Derek's poisonous briefing yesterday, they believed I was the enemy. They believed I was the bitter sister who had partnered with a liquidator to sell their jobs for parts. I adjusted the microphone stand. My hands were steady, but my knees felt like water. Beside me stood Dr. Simon Kett, looking grave in his charcoal suit. Next to him was Tessa Rowland, holding a thick leather portfolio, and behind us, silent and grim, were two security guards I had hired personally from a private firm in the city. The big roll-up door at the far end of the bay rattled open. Sunlight spilled in, blindingly bright against the dim industrial lighting. Derek Vane walked in. He looked like a man who had already won. He was wearing his best suit, a navy Italian cut that shimmered under the halogen lights. He walked with a bounce in his step, smiling and waving at the sullen workforce like a politician on the stump, and walking a half step behind him, like a shadow that couldn't quite detach itself, was my brother. Logan looked awful. His skin was the color of old parchment. He was sweating. Despite the air conditioning, he kept tugging at his collar, his eyes darting around the room, looking for an exit he knew wasn't there. He saw me on the platform and flinched, physically recoiling as if I had pointed a weapon at him. They climbed the metal stairs to the platform. Derek reached for the microphone, expecting me to step aside. He expected me to be the defeated insubordinate, standing there for my public shaming. I didn't move. Derek's smile faltered. He leaned in close to me, smelling of peppermint and arrogance. "Get out of the way." "Gabriella," he hissed, "you are lucky we let you be in the building for the transition. Do not make a scene." I looked at him. I looked at the man who had tried to sell my family's legacy for $1. "Please take your seat." "Mr. Vane," I said. My voice was amplified by the speakers, booming out over the silent factory floor. Derek froze. The employees down below murmured, a low ripple of confusion. "I am running this meeting," Derek whispered, his eyes narrowing. "No," I said, loud enough for the front row to hear. "You are not—" I turned to the microphone. I looked out at the faces of the people I had worked with for a decade. I saw Joe Miller, his face hard and angry. I saw Maya, standing near the back, her face pale but determined. "Good morning, everyone," I said. "Thank you for stopping the line. I know rumors have been flying. I know you are scared. I know many of you have been told that I'm here to destroy this company." I paused. The silence was heavy, suffocating. "I am not here to destroy it." I said, "I am here to return it to you." Derek stepped forward, his face flushing red. "This is unauthorized," he shouted, though he didn't have the mic. "She is suspended. This is a hostile action. Security!" He gestured to the two guards behind us. They didn't move. They just stared at him behind their dark glasses. "Doctor." Kett stepped forward. He placed a hand on the microphone, gently moving me aside for a moment. "Mr. Vane," Kett said, his voice dry and academic, but carrying the weight of the board. "Please sit down." Derek looked at Kett, stunned. "Simon? What are you doing?" "We have an agenda. We are announcing the partnership." "There is no partnership," Kett said. Derek blinked. "What?" Kett turned to the crowd. "Effective as of 8 o'clock this morning, the board of directors has accepted a binding offer for the purchase of the majority shares of Havensport Tool and Die." A gasp went through the room. Derek laughed, a nervous, jagged sound. "That is impossible. I control the voting block. I didn't approve a sale." "You do not control the block, Derek," Kett said. "You control the executive proxy, but under the bylaws, when a credible whistleblower report triggers a compliance freeze, the executive proxy is suspended, and during that suspension, the minority shareholders are permitted to form a quorum." Derek's face went slack. He looked at Logan. Logan was staring at his shoes. "Who?" Derek whispered. "Who bought it?" I stepped back to the microphone. "I did," I said. I watched the realization hit him. It wasn't a wave. It was a physical blow. He staggered back a step. "I formed Merriwick Stewardship Partners." I continued, addressing the floor. "It is a collective of local investors, including Harold Bryce, 42 retired employees, and myself. We have acquired 51% of the voting stock." I looked down at Joe Miller. His jaw had dropped. He looked from me to Derek, the anger in his eyes turning to shock. This brings us to the first order of business, I said. I turned to Derek. He was trembling now. The arrogance was gone, replaced by the cornered panic of a rat. Derek Vane, I said, my voice steady. Stripped of all emotion, the board has reviewed the evidence regarding the Vane Car Solutions entity and the unauthorized transfer of intellectual property. In lieu of immediate legal proceedings, the board has accepted your resignation, effective immediately. Resignation? Derek sputtered. I didn't resign. I am the CEO. You cannot fire me. Tessa Rowland stepped forward. She opened her portfolio and held up a document. We have the transfer logs. Mr. Vane, she said, her voice sharp and clear. We have the draft agreement selling the patent for $1. We have the invoices to the shell company in Briar Glen. You can resign, or we can call the state police who are currently waiting in the parking lot. It is your choice. Derek looked at the door. He looked at the guards. He looked at the crowd of workers who were now staring at him with a dawning, dangerous understanding. He slumped. He looked 20 years older in a second. Fine, he whispered. I am done with this rust bucket anyway. He turned to leave. But I wasn't finished. Wait, I said. Derek stopped. We are not done, I said. I turned to Logan. My brother was standing by the railing, gripping it so hard his knuckles were white. He looked like he was about to vomit. He was trying to make himself small, trying to disappear into the steelwork. Logan, I said. He looked up. His eyes were wet. He mouthed the word please. He wanted me to save him. He wanted me to do what I had always done. Clean up the mess, hide the evidence, and let him walk away with his dignity intact. He wanted the big sister to fix it. But the big sister was gone. The director of operations was here. You announced to this factory that you were the new partner. I said, you told these people that you were the future. Logan swallowed. Gabby, don't. I pulled a piece of paper from my pocket. It was the invoice from the fridge, the one with my price tag on it. We have reviewed the financial records. I said, we have found payments made to you from a vendor that does not exist. We have found unauthorized approvals for safety overrides. I took a breath. The air in the bay felt thin. Electric. You are not a partner. Logan, I said, you never were. You were a decoy. Logan flinched as if I had struck him. And effective today, I said, my voice ringing with a finality that hurt my chest. You are no longer employed by Havensport Tool and Die. The words landed like stones dropped into a deep well. You are fired. For a second, there was total silence. Then, a murmur started. It wasn't angry. It was shocked. The employees had seen Logan Reed as the golden boy, the untouchable prince. Seeing him cut down by his own sister was something they couldn't process. Logan stared at me. His face crumpled. You can't do this, he whispered. I am family. This is not a family. Logan, I said, this is a business, and you are a liability. Please surrender your badge and your keys to security. Derek, suddenly finding a scrap of his old malice, stepped forward again. You are witnessing a hostile takeover, he shouted to the floor, trying to rally the troops one last time. She is lying. She is firing her own brother to seize power. She is going to sell the patent. I looked at Tessa. She nodded. I picked up the remote for the projector screen that hung above the floor. I clicked the button. The screen lowered. A massive image appeared. It was the scan of the asset purchase agreement, the one Derek had drafted. I want you all to look at this, I said. I used a laser pointer to circle the line items. Seller, Havensport. Buyer, Car Global Holdings. Price, $1. This is the document Derek Vane prepared. I said, he was selling our patent, the process that secures the Green Agri contract, to himself for $1 if this meeting had gone his way. By noon today, this factory would have been hollow. You would have been working for a company that owned nothing. I clicked the next slide. It was the photo of the strip mall in Briar Glen. This is Crown Line Industrial Supply. I said, this is where $80,000 of our maintenance budget went. This is why we couldn't fix press number 4. This is why we are on mandatory overtime. I looked down at the crowd. The anger was shifting. It was turning away from me and focusing like a laser on the two men in expensive suits standing next to me. I did not buy this company to sell it, I said. I bought it to stop the theft. I looked directly at Joe Miller. Joe, I said, there are no mass layoffs. The draft plan Derek showed you was a fabrication. Joe nodded slowly. He crossed his arms, but this time he was looking at Derek. However, I continued, I have to be honest with you. The cash reserves are damaged. The inventory is compromised. We have a hole in the hull. I stepped closer to the edge of the platform. I am freezing all executive bonuses. I said, I am cutting my own salary to the floor minimum. We are going to conduct an immediate forensic audit of every vendor, and we are going to fix the presses before we ship another part. It will be hard. I said, we will have to work for it, but the profit stays here. The patent stays here. The jobs stay here. A single person started clapping. It was Maya. The sound was lonely at first. A sharp clap, clap, clap echoing in the cavernous space. Then Harold Bryce, standing in the front row of the visitors section, started clapping. Then Joe Miller uncrossed his arms and started clapping. And then the sound swelled. It wasn't a cheer. It was the heavy, rhythmic applause of working people who recognized the truth when they heard it. It was the sound of relief. Logan couldn't take it. The sound of the applause, the sight of the evidence on the screen, the reality of his public humiliation. It broke him. It wasn't my idea, he screamed, his voice cracking, high and desperate over the clapping. The applause died instantly. Logan was shaking, tears streaming down his face. He pointed a trembling finger at Derek. He told me to do it. He told me it was standard practice. He said the payments were a signing bonus. Shut up, you idiot, Derek hissed. No, Logan shouted. I won't go to jail for you. Wesley said I would be protected. He said the debts would be paid, and I would be the face of the company. I only did what Wesley told me. The name hung in the air, Wesley. Suddenly, there was a movement in the back of the room, near the shipping doors. A woman stood up. It was my mother. She was wearing a simple gray dress. She looked small in the vast factory, but she walked forward with a dignity I had never seen in her before. She walked right up to the base of the platform. She didn't look at me. She looked at Logan. That is enough, she said. Her voice wasn't loud, but in the silence, it carried like a bell. Mom? Logan sobbed. Mom, tell her to stop. Claudia Reed looked at her son. She looked at the man she had coddled, the man she had protected, the man she had sacrificed me for, over and over again. She shook her head. Pack your things, Logan, she said quietly. But Mom, no, she said, her voice hardening into steel. You helped them steal from us. You helped them steal from your sister. She looked up at Derek. And you, she said, my husband is waiting for you in the parking lot. He is very upset that his plan failed. I suggest you go explain it to him before the police arrive. Derek looked at her, then at the guards who were now stepping forward to escort him. He straightened his jacket, trying to salvage a shred of dignity. You people deserve each other. He sneered. He walked down the stairs. The employees parted like the Red Sea, refusing to touch him, refusing to even look at him. He walked out of the bay and into the harsh sunlight. A king in exile, Logan followed him. But he didn't walk tall. He slumped, sobbing openly. A boy who had finally learned that actions have consequences that love cannot fix. I watched them go. I felt a terrible, aching hollowness in my chest. I had won. I had saved the company. I had defeated the villains. But I had also fired my brother. I had destroyed my family's illusion of happiness. I turned back to the microphone. The room was watching me. They were waiting for orders. They were waiting for the new boss to tell them what to do. I took a deep breath. I pushed the pain down, locking it away in a box where I kept all the things I couldn't afford to feel right now. Okay, I said. Show's over. I pointed to Joe. Joe, get the maintenance crew to press number 4. I want those seals replaced by Monday. You got it, boss, Joe said. Maya, I said, get with the inventory team. I want a full count of the carbide. If it's not in the cage, it's not on the books. On it, Maya said. I looked at the rest of them. Let's get to work, I said. The assembly bay roared back to life. The lights hummed. The conversation started. The normalcy of production returned, covering the scars of the morning. I walked down the stairs. Harold met me at the bottom. He put a hand on my shoulder. You did it, he said. I looked at the door where Logan had vanished. Did I? I asked. You saved the place, Harold said. That is what matters. I walked to my office. My real office. The one with the window overlooking the floor. I sat at my desk. My phone rang. It was Tessa. The lawsuits are starting, she said. Wesley is suing for breach of contract. Derek is suing for wrongful termination. Let them sue, I said. We have the truth. It will be messy. Gabriella, it will take years. I know. I said. I hung up. I looked out the window. Down below, sparks were flying from the welding bays. The rhythm of the factory was a steady beating heart. I was the owner. I was the CEO. I was the victor. I picked up the picture frame on my desk. It was an old photo of me and Logan, taken 10 years ago at a company barbecue. We were smiling. We looked like we could conquer the world together. I placed the photo face down in the drawer and closed it. Then, I pulled over a stack of purchase orders and uncapped my pen. Winning wasn't a moment of glory. It was just the start of a longer, harder shift, and I was the only one left to work it. Thank you so much for listening to this story. It was a journey through the gritty reality of family betrayal and corporate justice, and I hope you felt every twist and turn along with Gabriella. I would love to know where you are tuning in from today. Please drop a comment below and let me know which country or city you call home. It is always amazing to see how far these stories travel. If you enjoyed seeing Gabriella take back control, please make sure to subscribe to Revenge Stories for more tales of justice, strategy, and sweet retribution. And don't forget to share your thoughts in English in the comments. Did Gabriella do the right thing by firing her brother? I'll be reading your responses. Until next time, stay sharp.